Section 11 of The Toilers of the Sea, by Victor Hugo. This recording is in the public domain, read by John Greenman. Chapter 3. The Ancient Dialect of the Sea. These mariners of the Channel Islands are veritable old Gauls. These islands, which at the present day are becoming rapidly anglicized, remained for a long time aboriginal. The peasant of Sark speaks the language of Louis XIV. 40 years ago the classic dialect of the sea was to be found in the mouths of the sailors of Jersey and Origny. One would have supposed oneself in the midst of the sea life of the 17th century. A philological specialist might have gone thither to study the ancient dialect of seaman and of battle shouted by Jean Bart through that speaking trumpet which terrified Admiral Head. The maritime vocabulary of our fathers, today almost completely changed, was still in use in Guernsey towards 1820. A vessel which worked well to windward was a good plier. A vessel which veered to the wind almost of itself, in spite of its foresails and its helm, was an ardent vessel. To get under way was to take air. To lie to was cap faire. To make fast the end of a running rope was faire dormant. To get the weather gauge was faire chapelle. To ride firm at anchor was faire test. To be in disorder on board was être en pantin. To have the wind in the sails was porter plein. Not one of these expressions is any longer in use. Today they say bon voyage, to beat to windward. Then they said beau voyage. Now naviguer, to sail. Then they said naviguer. They say virer vent devant, to tack. They used to say donner vent devant. They say aller de l'avant, to have headway. They said tailler de l'avant. They say tirer d'accord, pull together. They used to say aller d'accord. They say déraper, trip the anchor. They formerly said déplanter. They say embraquer, haul taut. They said abraquer. They say taquet, cleats. They said biton. They say bourrin. They said tap. They say balancine, halyards. They said valancine. They say tribord, starboard. They said stribord. They say les hommes de quart à bâbord, the men of the larboard watch. They said les bâbordis. Tourville wrote to Auquicourt, nous avons cinglé, we have sailed, instead of cinglé. Instead of la rafale, the squall, le rafale. Instead of bossoir, cathead, boussoir. Instead of dros, tackle, dvos. Instead of lofer, luff, faire une olofer. Instead of élonger, lay alongside, allonger. Instead of forte brise, stiff breeze, survent. Instead of joie, stock, ja. Instead of soute, magazine, fosse. Such was the nautical tongue in the Channel Islands at the beginning of this century. Angot would have been touched to hear a Jersey pilot speak, while everywhere else sails facier, shivered. In Channel Islands they say barbillaille. A saut au vent, flaw, was a folle vent. Nowhere else were two Gothic modes of mooring in use, the valture and the portugaise. Only there could the old commands be heard: torte choc, belay and slack; bosse et bite, stopper and bite. A Granville sailor would say le clan, sheave ho, while a sailor at St. Aubin or St. Sampson still said le canal de Pouliot. What was bout d'allonge, flukes, at St. Malo was oreille d'âne at St. Hélier. Miss Lethierry, precisely like the Duc de Vivonne, called the concave curve of decks the sheer, and the caulker's chisel la patarasse. It was with this uncouth dialect between his teeth that Duquesne beat Ruyter, that Duguay Troyen beat Wassenaer, and that Tourville brought the first galley which bombarded Algiers broadside on in full daylight in 1681. Today it is a dead language. The idiom of the sea is entirely different at the present time. Duperrey would not understand Suffren. The language of signals has been no less transformed, and it is a long way from the four pennants, red, white, blue, and yellow, of La Bourdonnais to the 18 flags of the present day which, hauled up by twos, by threes, and by fours, offer to the necessities of distant communication 70,000 combinations, are never at a loss, and, so to speak, foresee the unforeseen. End of Chapter 3. The Ancient Dialect of the Sea.